Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother Asarimhotep with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. And this is part 2 to our discussion, Ki.duru equals Kemet for the people in the back. And if you have not seen part 1, I encourage you to do so. There will be a link to part 1 in the description. And so we're going to deal with parts 3 and 4. I wanted to keep the first part short and to the point. And this one may be a little longer, so I didn't want to make a super long video that you could not digest. So we're just going to dive right into it when we return in just a moment. And we are back. And so part 3 of our discussion on Ki.duru equals Kemet is going to focus on the sound correspondences. And so we're going to have a separate conversation on the issue of phonemes, phonetics, transliterations, and the like, because that has been brought up in some of the discussions. And of course, this is one of the reasons why I'm requesting that we actually have a discussion with an actual Sumerologist who is also a linguist, so that we don't have to go over the basics with people who are trying to argue online, right? Who think in their mind that they're educating folks. But enough with that. We're going to continue with the conversation. And so when I set out to do an analysis on the word Kemet, I set up 3 criteria, because all the arguments that were presented before mine were just kind of all over the place. And, you know, they were unfalsifiable. And this adds more ambiguity and confusion to the argument. So we have to, again, I come from a computer science background, a math background. So we have to have a threshold. We have to have a basis so that it is rigorous when we're doing our analysis. So when it came to the word Kemet, I required for all of my analyses that 3 criteria are met. And that is, the first one is that the proposed or putative cognates must adhere to strict sound laws established by the non-accidental regular sound meaning correspondences, right? So that it means it could not just be an issue that there's a word Kemet in Egyptian, and then there's a word that kind of sounds like it in some other language, and then that, you know, I declare that these 2 words are cognate, right? That it must be the result of the regular non-accidental sound meaning correspondences established throughout the lexicon, especially the basic vocabulary. Secondly, the putative cognate must also contain the logical equivalent of the Egyptian T suffix suffixal morpheme determined by the established phonetic laws. So after we have established the sound laws or the sound correspondences, then we look into the presence of the equivalent morpheme in the related languages. right? So whatever form we have, it must have an equivalent to that's why I said logical equivalent, because some languages that are cognate with, that are related to Egyptian may have this morpheme prefix while the Egyptian has it suffixed. So but they're logically equivalent, right? And not only that, the morpheme itself must adhere to the phonetic laws that we set up in the first part of the experiment, right? So if the two sound laws do not, if the two phonemes do not agree in terms of their the recurrent pattern, then we don't include it, right? And so the even the morphemes must agree to the sound laws that we establish. So, and lastly, the meaning of the proposed cognate must agree with the terminating classifiers from the earliest forms of the word Kemet. So, not only that, when we examine the meaning of the potential cognate in languages B through Z, right, the meaning of the word must be within the same semantic field and agree with the classifiers of the earliest forms of the word Kemet. And this is going to be very important because the Egyptians did not put classifiers on these words for no reason. They're saying that this belongs to a particular category. This word belongs to a particular category. And they, in visual representations, created these so-called determinatives, but we now call them classifiers, to inform the reader of the conceptual, the semantic space for which this word belongs to. And so whatever meaning that the proposed cognate has, it must agree with the classifiers. It must exist within the same conceptual domain. Right. And so when we have all three of these criteria met, it will be next to impossible to argue against it because of the nature of the rigor involved in establishing the cognate. So here's a quick example here. So there's a lot of steps that we're going to have to skip for the sake of time, but this is what is in the book. So when I went to do some regular sound meaning correspondences with the word Kim, I lined up all the homographs of the word Kim in its various variations throughout the language in all time periods. And I started examining them across, various languages across Africa and, of course, Sumerian. And so what I saw consistently in Sumerian is that the KM consonant sequence consistently corresponded to words in Sumerian with the DR consonant sequence. So I have highlighted and bolded in red the consonants in sequence to help you to visually see, the what we're doing here, because vowels change as a result of environments. They're less stable than the consonants. So we first look at the consonants, and then we do an examination of the vowels. But unfortunately, the Egyptian language did not record the vowels, so we're kind of stuck with comparing the consonants for the Egyptian language. And then as a matter of rigor, I also added the Chiluba language as well. And so because the Egyptian and the Sumerian came and went before the Luba speakers in Central Africa, had writing, the writing, at least in the kind that we know, they didn't have time to differentiate these words in the same way that the Chiluba did. So there's more sound mutations in Chiluba. And believe me when I say that, all of these forms, even though some of them may look different in Chiluba, all obey regular sound meaning correspondences. which some of that we will see in other slides. So just to, you can look at everything, pause this when you are reviewing this or re-reviewing this video. But notice, so like, for example, dar, meaning a bird of black francolin, is in Egyptian sekem, a kind of fowl, which in Chiluba is chikololo, which is a crow, another black bird, right? We have dur, totality in Sumerian, which in Chikam or Egyptian, kim, total up, amount to, complete, put an end to pay, right? Which in Chiluba manifests itself in several forms, dialect forms. So one is Nkong, totality, and then one is Ujima, entire, and then we have one Kanda, complete, entire, right? And again, all of these obey regular sound meaning correspondences. So, there's something else going on amongst the Chiluba. Some of these may be loan words, inter Bantu, but that takes a different analysis. So we have this form here. I'll just do this as the last one. Ki.duru, meaning a disease. There's a word dur, a root dur, meaning to be sick, to become sick. And then when it has ki in front of it, which is a grammatical morpheme of the abstract, it becomes a word for a disease. And we had the same thing in Chikam. It's the word kimet, and it is a disease. And it has been narrowed semantically to a gynecological disease because of the feminine T, right? And so they associated with women, which corresponds to Chiluba, Sama, to be sick, to be ill, Chisama, Bisama, a disease, right? And so there's a sound long, so it's a phenomenon called velar laxing. And this is where you get these interchanges between K and S in world languages, and especially in in the Chiluba language, right? So you can view these for yourself, but you'll see consistently where there is a DR in Sumerian consonant sequence, there is a KM consonant sequence in Egyptian. So there's also, because I wanted to do the L's as well, because for those who are familiar with the Sumerian language, there is an L and R interchange or dialect correspondences. So in one dialect there'll be R, and another dialect there'll be L. And so it doesn't matter if it is R or L. They're both what we call a liquid consonant, and they still, in the DL consonant sequence, still correspond to KM in the Egyptian language, right? So we see these various dialect forms as far as the DR consonant sequence as well as the DL consonant sequence. And we also have the interchange in the Sumerian language between D and T, which is the voiceless form. So we've already established that the R in the second consonant position interchanges with L or corresponds with L. So you'll see a mix up here, but we're just dealing with the first consonant here, which is the T. So if D's and T's correspond in Sumerian and interchange, then the KM should also correspond to Sumerian TR and TL. And this is exactly what you see, just like with that Ki.duru disease. In the first one, endure, meaning to be sick, we have ter, illness, disease, to be ill, right? So it's just a dialect form. And, there's a whole debate and discussion on whether, there was a separation or a distinction of voicing consonants in terms of the first consonant position. We won't have time to go through that, but they definitely represented these terms with different graphemes that represented different consonants. And so like this till to N, which is Egyptian Kim in, which is in Chiluba Nkum in Finnish. So just, and then we'll do this last one, till, to be old, long lasting. In Egyptian, Sakim with the S prefix, to grow old, to be wise, balding, graying of the hair. And Chiluba is Kulu, ancient, old, elder, primordial, supreme, very old, older, etc., etc. Right? So we're seeing, I always like to have, minimum of 3 to 5 examples when I'm showing on a screen. In text form, of course, I exhaust the examples so that chance is not a plausible explanation for the correspondences that we see. All right, so let's continue. And so also, because with some other experiments in which the ancient Egyptian K and ancient Egyptian G corresponds to G in the first consonant position in Sumerian. So the R, and I'm going to add D for this discussion, but the R in the second consonant position we've already established. This is just more evidence, of this fact. But you can see here that even the GR corresponds to Kim. So this lets us know that based on the sound laws, if we was to look for a cognate in the Sumerian language, that it would either, based upon our analysis, it would either be in a form of the consonant sequence DR or DL or TR, TL, or GR, or you could say KID, because K and G interchange, and R and D interchange. And there's supposed to be a plausible sound in Sumerian, thur. It's like a D and an R together, which explains the D and the R interchange. Right, so that's been proposed by a number of Sumerologists, right? So we've established the sound laws for the Egyptian and Sumerian in this case, as well as in Chiluba. So now we're going to go to part 4 of our discussion. We're going to deal with the morphology. So remember my criteria. The first is that we have to establish the sound meaning correspondences, and the next one is going to be the morphology. And then for our proposed, the last one is our proposed putative cognate for the word Kemet in the ancient Egyptian language, that it the meaning must adhere to the classifiers in the forms that we find in ancient Kemet, right, or ancient Egyptian language. So remember that the word that I argued is cognate with the word Kemet is the Sumerian word Ki.duru. So we've already established that the DR is definitely obeys the sound laws that we established between the ancient Egyptian and Sumerian. So now we're going to have to deal with the key part, because that's the morpheme, the grammatical morpheme in the word Ki.duru, right? And so the T suffix in Egyptian is the grammatical morpheme in the ancient Egyptian language. So in this table here, we have a series of correspondences. And so we have the T suffix of place in Egyptian that is attached to the word Kim. And then we have this word Ki in the Sumerian language that means place, ground, earth, land, toward, underworld, land, country, lower, down, below, right? And what I argue in the text regarding the race and identity in ancient Egypt towards an etymology of the place name Kemet, is that the T suffix derives from the the full word ter. Some people say ta as in ta Mary, ta Nehisi, etc. This just means the land of. The word ter means earth, land, country. Though it could be Egypt itself, soil, farmland, buildable land. And what it means by buildable land is to say that the land is usable. We can live here. We can dwell here. This is a place that we can build on top of, right? So it's useful land, right? And so this will be cognate with the word in Sumerian Kur or Kir. Kir is the Imi Gur variant of the word, and Kur is the Imi Sal. So the Sumerian language is typically broken up into Imi Gur and Imi Sal. These are the two major dialects. And so what happens is in Imi Gur, the I sound dominates or corresponds in Imi Sal with U, the U sound, right? And so the primary form that you're going to see of this word is Kur, K-U-R. But the rare form is Kir, and it is this Kir that becomes Ki. So the R is dropped, just like the R. This is a sign for the nasalized uvular trill sound. It's a type of R sound. And so this is dropped to give us the suffix of place, the T suffix. And just like the R is dropped here in the Sumerian language. So the same phenomena happen, but this happens across the world. And so we can see that the TR in Egyptian, to burn, kiln, it's a type of oven, is cognate with Sumerian Kur, to burn, to light up. Also Kar, to light up, to shine, right? And then we have Ter, or sacrificial animal, which would be Ker, lamb, a female lamb, or Ker, or Gir, cow, or Nar, right? And you can say Teriyit, foe, enemy, and then Ker, stranger, enemy, hostility, etc. And in Sumerian, this last example, Condor Gate, the R has been nasalized, and which corresponds to Tir, main gate, main door of the temple. And so there's other experiments that we have done that shows that this in the second consonant position in comparison to the nasalized uvular trill in Egyptian is indeed regular. So seems out of place on this table, but it's regular overall, right? And so that same tir in Egyptian corresponds to sh, r, or s, r in Sumerian. So like this word ter, to kill, this dotted H here is a verbal suffix. And in the text, I give citations that explain all of these suffixes that I'm mentioning in Egyptian, right? And so, which is Sumerian shar, sar, meaning to slaughter, and then teher, to plunge into water, to souse, which was sud, to drown. So remember what we said earlier, the D's and R's often interchange and correspond internally within Sumerian, right? So teresh, to fix the limits, to divide, which would be sila or zil, to divide in Sumerian, but also kur, gur, guru, and gur, to divide, to separate. And so remember what I mentioned earlier, there's a phenomenon called velar laxing. So we can do some other experiments that show that these S, or these sibilant sounds here, derive from the weakening of these velars here. The velar meaning K and G. So K, G, right? So the phenomenon which we're talking about here, which is the reduction of a whole independent lexeme And its transformation in terms of usage into a grammatical morpheme is called morphologization, right? And so here's a text, Trask's Historical Linguistics, another text which I introduced in this community, which people seem to be misquoting and using old versions of the text to try to argue with me with. That's another conversation for another day, but we're going to continue here. So dealing with this phenomenon on page 104, he says, sometimes what was formerly an independent word becomes reduced to a bound morpheme, in the process typically losing its formal lexical meaning and acquiring instead a mere grammatical function. We call this process morphologization. It is very common. Indeed, there are linguists who would maintain that all bound morphemes originate in this way, and I'm one of those individuals, right? And so he gives an example here. I won't read everything, but I might. But when you say "li" as a grammatical morpheme in English, this used to be a whole word, "lik," meaning body, right? So he says the English adverbial suffix "li" has also been obtained by morphologization. Old English had a noun "lik," body, which has developed in various ways. A lick or a lich, it survives in lich gate, a roofed gateway to a church where coffins were formerly placed to await the arrival of clergymen. The derivative Gaelic, having a common body, is the source of our word like. So when you say the word like, like you look like your mama, what you're saying is the person has a common body. That's what it means like. It's almost the same body. It's like the body has been doubled. That's the semantics behind this word. So when you say like, it is based off an old English word that we no longer use in that form, lich, or lich, meaning body, the physical body, as in she's just like you. But early on, the word lick, like, or lich, however you want to pronounce it, also came to be compounded with nouns to express the sense of resembling and then having the characteristics of. Hence, Old English, fatherlick, we say father-like, and that's what became fatherly. So the k sound, or ch sound, was dropped and it left the li. Today we spell it with ly, right? So when you say fatherly, you're really saying fatherlick. And when you say manlick, you're saying manly. Here the original noun has been reduced to a mere suffix. Finally, much the same thing happened with adjectives. A case-inflicted form of like was added to an adjective to express the meaning in the manner of. Hence, Old English slaw-like, slowly, and quickly, or quick-like, or quick-chew-like, or quick-coo-like. How would you say that? Quick-coo-like? Quick-chew-like? I have to ask somebody. But anyway, it became quickly in our modern sense. And here again, the original noun has been reduced to a purely grammatical affix, our suffix "li," for making adverbs out of adjectives. So you can see how this process happens. So this is exactly what happened with our word ter, meaning earth. And so if you want to know some more about, this phenomenon and how independent words can become grammaticalized or morphologized, this book is a great help too. It's called World Lexicon of Grammaticalization, right? And then, for all of you in this community, no, you didn't know about this book. So don't be trying to misquote this book and you didn't read it fully and understand what was going on. You new Negroes, we had to monitor you all. But anyway, so this is exactly what happened to the word ter, meaning earth, land, arable land, land for construction, etc. A form of that word is zerechu, or zerechwa, meaning ground, floor, earth. A number of sound mutations in Egyptian, which we won't get into right now, right? And so a cognate of that is in the Wolof language. So you have Tul, farm, garden, wetland, and then Tuliar, meaning field. Another form where the T becomes D is Dal, land and lodge, in the Wolof that is spoken in the Gambia, right? So remember that, arable land is farmland, Egypt, soil material, land for construction. That's all farmland. That's all that means. And so these are cognates, and of course, based on regular sound meaning correspondences, which we want to examine here today. So, you can see the various forms of this. I also added Daguerre and the collagen language. And so there's more where the so-called deviations are explained by other sound mutations and environments. But this is just here, for you to look at, so you can pause this video if you are not watching live, and you can come and review this later on your own, right? So, but the what is the nasalized uvula trio is dropped in Egyptian, and is also dropped in a number of West African languages. So instead of saying ter as in territory in English, right there, the Ibira language, Igara language, they'll say ete, earth, land, earth goddess. In Bini Edo language, auto, earth, ground, soil, earth goddess. Or hobo, Oto, this is all Nigeria. Oto, but in the Hebrew, it becomes mata, below, right? And in the Mande language, Indo, earth, and we can tell that the second consonant had been dropped. And that's why we have this elongated vowel, this long vowel, because Mande doesn't have long vowels. So the reason why you spell it with two O's is it's a phenomenon in linguistics called propensatory lengthening. And so that happens with vowels when a consonant is dropped, right? So, and then Kikamba and Bantu, Inti, floor, ground, land, country, Swahili, Inchi, country. As we continue, and here are some other variants in the Yoruba language. It becomes Ita, outside market, in Ijebu, Yoruba, Ita, outside street market, Ewe, Asi market. And then there's a voice variant, Ode, outside, compare like the name Ode Remo. That's the lineage for when I joined Ifa or Isheshe tradition. I'm in the lineage of Ode Remo, right? And then Idi buttocks, root, base, reason, all from the same root. Because the ground, the country, the land is also a signal for being outside, right? So what I want to prove in the next slides is that the T suffix is not also a suffix, is not simply a suffix of the feminine, but it's actually a suffix of the abstract, as well as for place names, for it's a suffix of place, as I mentioned earlier. So this is from Julian Cooper's 2015 PhD dissertation, Toponymy on the Periphery. It's actually made into a book by the same name. But when I originally put this together, it was still a dissertation. So he says on page 299 that he gives an example of the toponym, the Bepsti, right? He says there is no phoneme P in languages of this region. So this is a region in Nubia. So the second consonant must mask an F or a B. If it is in the Beja region, one might think of the verb bubos, to cause to light up, or babis, bury in several graves. When an onlot T, I guess it's supposed to be an onslaught T, being a productive suffix in Beja toponymy, right? So again, in the Beja language, toponyms, names for toponyms, are suffixed with the T, And so it gives an example in the footnote 1631, with the word quibus, meaning to hide. And then you have a form quabasat, hiding place. So place of hiding. So it's letting you know that it is a place suffix, right? And so we go into ancient Egyptian, and he's looking at the name Wakemit. So there's a Wakemit place name that is also in Nubia. So he's saying that it's from a connection with the word wagim, to grind, to powder, et cetera, where K to G sound change. We're going to go here, 1311, and then it says the connection with the root wakim, giving the sense of to provide, might be the preferable option. The oslot T is easily explained as a nomen loci, providing place, or a more abstract meaning, the providing one. So with this, what it's saying is this is literally the Latin for place name. So a loci meaning location or place, and then nomen meaning name. So he's saying the T is a place name suffix, right? So he goes on again with this other name, the place name Arawitiyet. I don't know how you pronounce that. Or Ki.duru Km.t also contains a nominal suffix T, which might be analyzed as being a collective suffix or as a nomen loci, or a place name attached to a nominal root. So I'm giving you these source materials. So when I'm saying that these are place name suffix, that it derives from a word meaning a place, a land, etc., that you understand that I have academic backing to this. And it's these place names, these place suffixes that double as suffixes or grammatical morphemes for the abstract in many world languages, especially in African languages, right? So we're going to go to this text edited by Dr. Gabor Takacs, and it is Egyptian and Semito-Hamitic Studies, in memoriam of W. Visichel, right? And so Dr. Christopher Arrett, the late Dr. Christopher Arrett, who passed away this year, he has an article titled Third Consonants in Ancient Egyptian. And so on page 34, he's talking about the T noun suffix. And he gives these characteristics. He says that it is a noun complement of adjectives. It is a tangible or abstract noun complement of a noun, a deverbative object of action, deverbative attributive, deverbative instrument agent, and deverbative complement, forming inter alia abstract nouns. The last of these usages, 3 cases of which are cited here, may have been the most productive in ancient Egyptian. And so when you have a T suffix, it can make a verb into an abstract noun, or it can make a noun into an abstract noun, right? And so to give you an example of this phenomenon outside of the feminine T, but within the ancient Egyptian language, we have the word b, meaning foot, or bu, meaning foot, but it also means place and thing. And so it is used grammatically, the word for foot and place or ground, as a prefix of the abstract. So, for example, you have neb, all, and then you have bu neb, everyone. Then we have the word ma, meaning true, and then you have buma, truth. Bin, meaning bad, evil. Then you have bu bin, all manner of evil. So we're seeing that the word for foot or place is used to mean the abstract. So this lets you know that the T suffix was a word meaning ground or place. And then, as I argued earlier, derives from ter or ta, and whatnot. And so you have a a few examples that I use in Chiluba, for example, because Chiluba has the bu, or Bantu in general, has the bu suffix, the bu prefix of abstraction. So a good example is linga, to be good, to be beautiful, etc. And then we have bu and dingeja, art excellence, as the abstract form. And so when the L is nasalized, it becomes D. So indi. And then, we have this causative suffix ja in the Chiluba language, but it's prefixed by bu. In the Songo, in Lingala, it is bo instead of bu. So we have, for example, koseba, meaning to sharpen, and ko, meaning a prefix of the infinitive, and becomes boseba, meaning horn. So horns are very sharp. So it becomes an abstract concept of, or in this case, a concrete concept, but using abstraction morpheme to get there, meaning horn. And then we have Sango, Baingiri, I, and literally place of gaze. So we have this word Ngiri, which means to see, and then we have literally, and then Baingiri, meaning place of gaze or place of vision, right? So that's what your eyes are, or it's the place, it's a location in time and space. And so we'll continue. And so that book that I mentioned on world grammaticalization, edited by Hein and Kuteva, it has more on this concept of the word for foot also meaning down, and how it is used to mean under in the world's languages, right? And so this is just an example. You can pause and read this on your own. But I want to give another example of the abstraction in ancient Egyptian. And so we have this word here, set, meaning seat, place, position, throne, residence, place, seat, position, rank, grounds of a house. So the ground, the land is what this also refers to, which is why you have this classifier of space of a place right here, right? And so it is also used as an abstract prefix. So, for example, we have the word hemet, meaning woman, and then we have set hemet in terms of the abstract nature of a woman. And this is the form in Coptic, sehime. And then you have the word ib, meaning heart and will. And then you have set ib, meaning desire and affection. Then you have ar, or ro, mouth. And then you have setar, utterance, enunciation. So you can see how the word for foot, below, ground, place, etc., becomes the morpheme of the abstract and the morpheme of place. But they all come from words that, again, that are independent words that are used grammatically, in reference to a kind of place, and then more historically, more diachronically, all deriving from a word meaning foot or leg. And so this is important, and this is why the understanding of semantic fields is important for historical comparative linguistics. And with that said, this is an example of that same set in ancient Egyptian. In the Songo language, it is se, meaning, and so this sa, or se inda, meaning science, from inda, meaning origin or cause, right? So when they understand, or when the Shango people talk about science, they're talking about the study of causes, or the origin of things, the systematic study of causes and the origin of things, right? And then we go into Zande. This one example here, Hina Passe, knowledge, coming from Hina, knowledge. And so more knowledge in the abstract sense, coming from knowledge on the individual sense. But then there's an interesting form here, Gbera Ingbi, meaning calamity, from the word Gbera, meaning to be bad. And so in the Zande language, Se and Ingbi mean earth. So this is further proof of the grammatical, or the correlation between ground, place, earth, and and it transforming into the morphing of place and also acting as the abstract, right? And so this is exactly what we see with the Ki prefix in the Sumerian language. So we have another Ki.duru, which means a disease, but it comes from dur, meaning to be sick. And so just like, even though it's using a different prefix, in a Chiluba Bantu language, we have the word ila, meaning to be sick, suffering. But the bu abstract prefix added to the word, and then followed by I. And, when the L is followed by I, it becomes D. So we have bubidi, meaning disease, sickness, affection in the more abstract sense. So we're just giving you these examples. So we have Ki.duru, meaning a stool, from the word dur, meaning to sit. So it is not, or you can say the place of sitting, or a stool, just like with the Ngbiri, what was that? I'm sorry. Let me go back to, what is that word? That was probably in the other. Yeah, in the Songo language. Ba Ngiri. Ngiri meaning to see. And then we have Ba Ngiri meaning eye. So it is the place of vision or the place of gaze. And so when you talk about a seat, it is the place of sitting, the place where one sits, the place where one dwells. But it's used simultaneously as an abstract. And so that's what a stool is. So it instrumentalizes, almost kind of used as an instrumental place. And so we can see the Ki being used in this way for places like Kibala, meaning rebel land, and Bala, meaning to rebel, to resist, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have this word Ngiri, meaning foot, and then the nasal part is lost, and it just becomes Giri, and Kigiri, meaning road or path. This is the abstract form of the concept of foot. So we always get foot, meaning to walk and to go. And then from a walk and to go, we get the word for path. So that's how that plays out. And so, so we can see here, and just kind of to sum up this right here, that the same forms in Sumerian are found in Egyptian, and the same phenomena happens where the second consonant is dropped so that it can reduce to a consonant vowel morpheme to be added to the word to act as an abstract as well as a place grammatical morpheme, right? And so when doing my grammar test for Egyptian and Chiluba, I created this table, and you can, I won't go through all of these, but you can, because I've shown this 100 times, and of course it's in the book. But of course, if you want to pause it and examine it yourself, you can verify these on your own. But just to give an example, so in Egyptian, we have Mehmet, an edible plant and its fruit. And then we have in Chiluba, Chimuma, fruit, orange, fetus, right? And then we have, some people pronounce it as mut, but it's mawut. And in Chiluba, we have Chimamu or Chimawu, my mother, mom, maternal aunt, etc. And then lastly, I'll do pepet, a plant. And then we have in Chiluba, Chipupu, foliage. And so everywhere you see this this T, if it's in the same category, it corresponds to Chi prefix in the Chiluba Bantu language. So we're verifying the same morpheme in Bantu as well as in Egyptian. And so a second test that I wanted to do in comparison of Chiluba and Egyptian or Chicam is the T suffix still used on does the T suffix in Egyptian and the Chi prefix in Chiluba still correspond even when the roots of the words for which they are attached are not cognates? So I did this in several different other examples, but just to simplify it here, like this word jiriit, wall or floor, it has the same grammatical morpheme in Chiluba, chibua, wall, dirt, road, clay, floor. So the exact same meanings, and it has the exact same morphological prefix and suffix, respectively. And so this is further proof of the relationship, and this is non-accidental, right? So wanted to do the same when it came to the Sumerian and Chiluba. So, in Chiluba, we've already established that chi equals the suffix T in the ancient Egyptian language. And we're going to do another proxy evaluation with the chi with Sumerian. And so this first one, so we're not looking at the roots of the word. We're only looking at the morphemes. So we're not even arguing for now that the main words are cognate in Chiluba and Sumerian. All we're saying is that regardless of the word used, both Sumerian and Chiluba use the same morpheme when discussing the term, right? So, for example, Chiminga, meaning city, town, urban center. In Sumerian, it is Iri or Uru, meaning city, but it's always given with the Ki classifier. And so you would say Iri Ki. Some will say that the classifiers aren't pronounced, but it is pronounced in most other cases. So this is why I included here, right? And so we have Chipapu, flat surface region. And then in Sumerian, we have Kisug, threshing floor, select fallow land, whose surface was conditioned to act as a threshing floor, right? Or a flat land. And then we have in Chikulu, Jikolo, site of an abandoned village. And then we have Iria, wasteland, right? And this E is normally associated with the word for house, but it's also used for place. And I have to show in a different video that the word for house is the same word as the word ki or kur, because it's dealing with place, right? And then I show in this example here how the I and the E's interchange in the same language. So you can have a consonant vowel, and then they'll lose the consonant and just be left with the vowel. So that's exactly what happened here, right? So we have Chibelu, entrance, door, and then we have Kikur, entrance, both coming from words meaning to enter. But notice that for the Bantu to say entrance, they use the same grammatical morpheme as the Sumerians use. To say the word stable and fence, the Bantu uses the same grammatical morpheme as the Sumerian. To say the word for tomb or grave, they use the exact same grammatical morpheme as the Sumerian, right? The root words are different, but the grammatical morphemes are the same, right? So it is on that ground. And so remember what we said in terms of the three criteria, that the sound correspondences must be present. And we also have the grammatical morphemes to match, which we just proved right now. And the proposed cognate, its meaning must be within alignment of the classifier used in the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic script for the word Kemet. So one of the earliest forms of the word Kemet uses this mer glyph, if you can see in the top left hand corner, which is the word for a canal or river or any body of water, and especially used in the word for floods. Matter of fact, the word mer means flood, right? And so this is why we say the word Ki.duru, damp ground, irrigable land, is the cognate for the word Kemet. And we're going to get deeper into that in the next few slides. So these are the earliest forms of the word Kemet, right? The people classifiers come later. There's one with the deity sign, the A, not the A1, but the deity, to see the man with the beard glyph. And there's a few others that are used in terms of even the per, the place is used as a classifier. But these are all later renditions. The earliest ones use these glyphs, and they all have to deal with the direction of water. This is specifically irrigated land, the N23, and the N36 is an irrigation canal, but it's also used for rivers and in lakes and things of that nature. And the 049 glyph, as we discussed earlier, are just two irrigation channels coming together, and it's not a crossroads. And I have a whole chapter dedicated to that in the 2023 text, right? And so this is kind of out of place, but just showing you from that same book on world grammaticalization that the earth, soil, land, ground also means down, right, and under. And it's used grammatically in that sense as well, right? And so remember that key, place, ground, earth, land, lower, down, below. This is going to be very important here, all right? And so even that, so as I discussed in the 2023 text, that the word Kemet is actually the merger of two different Kemets. One directly, dealing with ground, earth itself, and another one meaning, a floodplain, a wetland coming from the overflow of water, and which is used in terms of the complete context. And so I'm showing how this concept of the fall down. And it's the noun comes first, so it's the leg, foot, ground, earth, etc., and then that gives the derived meanings of to sit, down, below, under, etc. comes about. So anything dealing with or in the direction of south, that's what this DR consonant sequence is dealing with. So lower part, lower torso, anus, to sit, to install a king, meaning to seat a king on the throne. And then we have the tush forms, and then we have dwelling, seat, to sit down, to dwell, to reside, inactive, to prostrate oneself, dwelling, to be on duty. Ki tush is the same as Ki.duru, and it's saying dwelling place, right? And so just like in ancient Egyptian, the Sumerian has both forms of the word in the meaning the same thing. And so we have, this is just a different dictionary. This is the Elementary Sumerian Glossary from Foxfall 2016. And his entry, tush, to sit, to take a seat, to settle, establish residence, to dwell, reside, stay, abide, to take the place of. And he's talking about here that it's a different form of duru or durun. And you could read this off for yourself. But most will tell you that tush and dur are the same word. Right. So I'm showing that even in Chiluba, you can have, if we're just looking at the consonant sequences and even with the vowels, these concepts merging because they sound alike. They became homonyms at one point. So shikama, sit, sitting, wait, stay quiet, sit down, live, reside, behave. Chikomo, inkum, inkam, mukam, to sit and location. And then, of course, inkam, mukam is paronymic with Jigama, damp ground, right? So this Jigama is cognate with Ki.duru in the Sumerian, meaning damp ground, wetlands, field, irrigated field, etc. And then we have a variant of this concept of wetness, moisture, and it's Chishima. The K has been palatalized to sh, and moisture, freshness, coldness, dampness, right? So, you use the related languages to reaffirm certain arguments. And this is one of the ways in which we do it. So just like in the Nupe language, we have kum, watering place, but you change the vowel, kan, and we have farm. Kin, land, earth, ground, country. K.t, high ground. So, you can get confused in ancient Egyptian, for example, because they don't have any vowels, but the changing of the vowels changes the context of the common theme within the same semantic field. And so we can tell in the Nubian language, really, that they lost a lot of grammatical morphemes. That's really probably the reason for the vowel changes. These are the result of being in an environment that once existed because it had prefixes and suffixes, where assimilation of the vowels took place, right? But you can see they're all represented by the same consonant sequence. And so the cognate for Kemet in Wolof language is Kam, water reservoir, still water, backwater, area where animals and life in general congregates. So remember in video 1, when we read the definition of Ki.duru, it talks about in a place where animals can congregate, right? And of course they have to drink. You see in the National Geographics a bunch of animals coming by a lake or by a river to get water. So that's where they all congregate. So that's where herds come to, because there's, grass and other vegetation there that they come and eat and drink. And so that's what a calm is, where the people can live and dwell because there's an abundance of what? Grass and water. And so Kam, waterway, waterland. And there's a place in Senegal called Wakam. It's a Lebu neighborhood area in Dakar, which sits on a canal and the edge of the Atlantic. And so Wa is a word meaning citizens or people. And so those of the Kam, those of Kemet, right? And then we have variants of their root, Kimba, meaning to be damp and moist. And then Gam, meaning geological depression or a ditch. And these are all the same. So like when you see, for example, this variant on the bottom right here of the word Kemet with the river or the canal. Remember, a canal or a river or irrigation channel is just a ditch, So a ditch is a dugout, long stretch of space where the water flows, right? And so that's what a com is. That's why you have these classifiers, these determinatives. So that's what Egypt is one big landmass with one big ditch running through it. We call in modern times a river. And this is what makes it a riparian land, but not just any river. It's a river that overfloods its banks and deposits black soil. And so there's a phenomenon here that may not be obvious to you, but all of these in Wolof is the word Kemet. And what we see is where the T used to be, as far as the suffix, it is dropped in Wolof, and it creates what we call propensatory lengthening of the vowel, right? So that's how the word kam with just one A becomes gam, because the loss of the T, they want to compensate for it, so they elongate the root vowel. So it's kam, but that happens as a result of the loss of the T suffix. So this meets all the criteria based on regular sound correspondences, which we can see here, the grammatical morpheme, in this case in Wolof it is lost, and the proposed cognate is based upon the determinatives of the earliest forms of the word Kemet. All criteria is met in Wolof. All criteria is met in Chiluba. All criteria is met in Sumerian, right? But we're going to get on this, and this is another variant of the loss of the T in the forms, where the B assimilates to the voicelessness of the T suffix that once existed there, and since the T was lost, instead of doing a propensatory lengthening, it just made the B voiceless in the final consonant position, right? So we can discuss that at a later time. And so in the Sumerian language, I wanted to show that there's different forms of these words, but they all derive from the same source or the same forms, right? So, for example, that dur, meaning to sit, lower part, lower torso, dur meaning endurum. This is an Akkadian suffix. Path, step, and Ki.duru, meaning village, hamlet. There's a second form of the word where the D is dropped, and you're just left with legs, hips, lap, private parts, bottom, base, foundation. It gives birth to Ki, meaning base, location, main habitation. In other words, a village, a hamlet, or Uru, meaning, or Iri, is the Imi-gur variant of the word, meaning city, town, village, or district, right? So this is brought up because you have to know how the consonants were lost in Sumerian, and how this brings or adds to the argument. So like the same thing here, dur, to be sick, illness, uri, disease, dur, bond, strap, rope, ligament, harness, constrained, pinned up. These are all Sumerian. Do, it lost the consonant, the R consonant, to crack open, to take apart, such as a plow for storage. And then you have uru, meaning to plow, to till. And so what do you do when you plow? You're breaking up the earth, the soil. You're loosening it up. And then you have duru, to be massive. Then you have uru, high, lofty, giant, powerful, mighty, strong. So the reason why the D consonant is lost is because of the shifting of the stress when the initial prefixes, when they existed and were productive in Sumerian, were present. And then the loss of them often took with them some of the consonants. This is how a lot of the consonant vowel root forms ended up being reduced to vowel consonant, and then in some cases just vowel, because there was a lot of erosion in Sumerian, right? And and this word diri, remember the I's and U's interchange between emi-gur and emi-sa respectively. And so this is diri, this is emi-gur, radiance, and then uru, watch, fire, glow, luminous object, etc. in emi-sa. We have diri, to be full, to exceed, to be abundant, additional, excessive. And so here's an example of the U and I interchange. Dub, to pour, to sprinkle, versus dib, to pour out. And so this is what gives us Ki.duru, damp ground, wet place, describing fields, because it talks about the process of overflowing the banks and irrigation. And so it's from this process of irrigation due to an abundance of water that you get the adjective forms wet, moist, moisture, and stuff to that nature. And then we have this form here, Uduru, flood, Uduru, abating of a wave or current. And there's a meaning abundance, which is in the next slide. So I show here how we have the KR consonant sequence and how that becomes DR, and how the K or the D is lost and it just becomes UR in the third rendition. So again, this voicing, devoicing, and velar laxing and initial consonant mutation loss is all due to the loss of prefixes and suffixes on the root in Sumerian. And so this word kur or kir, meaning land and country, is internally cognate with the lower part, lower torso, because remember, foot, the lower part, the ground, is what becomes the words for place, village, hamlet, whatever, anything dealing with a habitable space, right? And so we see these variations and how they become city, town, village, district, dwelling, lair, bedding place, seat, in terms of Ki.duru, right? And then let's go back to the second, this third row here at the top. So you can see we have kur or kurku, meaning flood or wave, and then kurku meaning purification priest of Nisaba, right? And how that corresponds to diri, because again, the I's and U's interchange dialect forms, meaning to be full, to exceed, to be abundant, additional, excessive. And this is what becomes duru, to moisten, to be wet, moist, fresh, as the adjectival forms, because of this main form here. So duru means irrigated, and that's what the diri, it comes from diri. And you can see here uru, flood, just like kuru, flood, to be abundant. And so this is why it doesn't, Ki.duru comes from a word ultimately meaning flood, to swell, and is referring to the water of the Tigris and Euphrates, just like the Kemet is referring to the flooding of the Nile River, right? You can examine these on your own here. So that's why I said here, this reinforces the Kim, to rise, to fill, Kim, complete, full, Kemet, riparian land, because a riparian land is a land that gets its water and fertile soil from left over from the deposits. The deposits are left over from the flooding process of the river. So it comes from the notion of irrigation, right? And so here again is that semantic split, but they all ultimately come from the same root of body part, limb, leg, foot. And so this is fully explained with even more examples so that you get it in the 2023 book, Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt Towards the Etymology of the Place Name Kemet. So when I make these statements and things, it's always the result of a deep study with dozens upon dozens of examples and experiments, so that no one can argue against it. That's just how I roll. So these are the kinds of things that we have to do in order to remain rigorous and scholarly. And so if anyone has an argument against it, I encourage you again to go find you an Egyptologist who is also a linguist and or a sumerologist who is also a linguist, and let us have the discussion, because you aren't prepared to have the discussion with me. I have to explain too much to you. And it's not me being facetious. This is just noted through experience, having these debates and arguments with all the emotionals online. And so it gets to a point where it's tiring, and y'all aren't even worthy opponents. So please, I'm begging you, go find your teachers, have them have the conversation with me. I guarantee you it will be a different conversation. It will be a more productive conversation. So with that being said, I do appreciate your time, Unc Uja Seneb, and until next time, Hotep.
See reality breaking down all my fantasies. It would be nice if I at least had one fantasy. That neutrality about to take a terabyte from the American apple pie, better get a slice. It's kinda scary the way that this life is moving on. Marvin's doing backflips inside his grave, what's going on? We have head-on collisions, not seeing another's vision. Maybe that's the reason why some colors fit the description. A lot of relationships need life rafts, sinking ships. I guess you just can't have only one like potato chips. I would love for you to listen with an open heart, but would you really even hear me if it's torn apart? I don't do the things that I used to. I'll be fine even if I lose you, okay? Yeah. Okay.
This program was created with the love and support of all our Patreon members and subscribers. If you are not a member yet and would like to see more content like this, consider becoming a member today. The link is in the description of this video. Your support is greatly appreciated.